You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show.
The view from our side of the cockpit door.
WAPG, it's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy episode 643.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. The view from our side of the cockpit door. With your host, Captain Jeff, broadcasting live from the APG Road Vessel Studio. Today's show is recorded on the week of December 9th, 2024.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. Put your light and he's flying by. With the Airline Pilot Guy.
In today's episode, more questions than answers in the preliminary report on the deadly crash of a small jet in Mesa, Arizona. And a final report finds that a 737 freighter flew with 2 fuel pumps off. Also ahead, more news, your feedback, and today's plane tale. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seat backs in the upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. I'm Radio Roger, and Flight 643 is ready for pushback.
Thank you, Radio Roger. He's an award-winning TV and radio reporter, currently at the #1 all-news station in the nation. 1010 wins on 92.3 FM in
New York City!
Welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. It's an aviation podcast covering the latest in aviation news and answering your great feedback. I'm Captain Jeff, former U.S. Air Force pilot and retired Delta Airlines captain. And joining me today from his studio,
in Hartford, Hereford, and Hampshire.
Ex-professional photographer, former RAF, RAAF fighter pilot, retired Airbus A330, A340 captain for Virgin Atlantic Airways. It's Captain Nick.
Hi there, Jeff. Great to be back on the show again. Isn't it wonderful? Now, APG 643 is great, but so was Avro 643, a biplane trainer built by Avro in the 30s. And somehow we managed to flog it to Australia, Ireland, Portugal, China, and Spain. Oh, weren't we clever?
Very. And speaking of clever, also joining us from... yeah, from her studio in Toronto, Ontario. Retired financier and aviation enthusiast, spreadsheet master, and our producer, it's the lovely Liz Piper.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you guys.
Great to see you. And that's it today for our crew. Mm-hmm. And, yeah, we're going to have fun.
Have a good show, you guys.
Thanks.
Cheers, Liz.
All right. What do you say we do some news, Captain Nick?
Well, that's a damn good idea, sir.
I thought so.
Stand by for news.
All right, we're going to start off with a preliminary report from the National Transportation Safety Board on the Hondajet crash in Mesa, Arizona. This occurred on the 5th of November, 2024, so a little over a month ago. And I have to say, I'll read most of this, but not a lot of information here. They didn't really find anything that looked like it may have contributed at all, as far as the way I'm reading it, to this accident. On November 5th, 2024, at 16:39 Mountain Daylight Time, a Honda HA420, November 5-7 Hotel Papa, was destroyed when it was involved in an accident near Mesa. The pilot and 3 passengers were fatally injured. 1 passenger was seriously injured, and the single occupant of an automobile was fatally injured. So I think that's, total of 5 fatalities? Is that right? Did I do my math right?
5 fatal, 1 serious.
Yeah. And I don't recall exactly what the serious injuries were, but I guess we'll find that out later in further reports. Let's see. The airplane was operated as a Title 14 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 91, personal flight. According to the survivor, the occupants were flying from Falcon Field in Fox Zulu in Mesa to Provo, Utah, to attend a college basketball game. They intended to return to Mesa that same night, did not pack any luggage. A friend assisted the occupants as they entered the airplane and prepared for the flight. According to the friend, the pilot had fueled the airplane from a private fuel tank prior to the flight. He did not know how much fuel specifically was added, but the pilot had communicated to him that there was sufficient fuel for the flight and that he would refuel at Provo before returning. The friend did not observe the airplane take off. The air traffic control tower controller cleared the pilot for takeoff from runway 22 left, which the pilot acknowledged. No further transmissions were received from the pilot. Security video captured the airplane accelerating on runway 22 left until about 3,000 feet from the approach end of the runway, about 2,100 feet of runway remaining. The airplane subsequently began to decelerate and overran the departure end of the runway near centerline. The airplane maintained runway heading and struck the airport perimeter fence located about 600 feet beyond the departure end of the runway before it continued across a roadway. The airplane struck a single vehicle when it entered the roadway and came to rest upright on the far side of the road. The airplane fuselage fractured forward of the leading edge of the wings and a post-impact fire ensued. The wreckage was examined on scene before being moved to a secure location for additional evaluation. Flight control continuity was verified from the cockpit to all flight control surfaces, and all major components of the airplane were identified at the accident site. There was no evidence of any parts separating from the airplane prior to the airplane impacting the perimeter fence. The control column gust lock was located uninstalled. The airplane brake and anti-skid system was examined, and no anomalies were noted. The airplane was equipped with a Garmin 3000 integrated flight deck, a G3000 avionics suite. The G3000 is capable of recording flight log data on a removable secure data, an SD card, and central maintenance data, or CMD, within the primary flight display and multifunction display. Flight log data is limited to some airplane performance parameters, engine operating parameters, and limited system operating functions. Flight log data does not record any systems warnings. The SD card was removed from the multifunction display, and the flight log data for the accident flight was recovered. The data showed that during takeoff, the airplane had accelerated to about 130 knots before it began to decelerate. No engine anomalies were noted in the data. Both PFDs and MFD were removed from the wreckage and sent to the National Transportation Safety Board Recorder's Laboratory for download for the CMF data. So there, not really a lot more information that we already knew. I mean, a couple of data points, of course, the speed at which the aborted takeoff commenced, how far down the runway, etc. And the other thing that I think was interesting, Captain Nick, was that they mentioned the fuel and that it was filled from a private fuel tank, and it wasn't specifically stated by the pilot how much fuel he added. But then again, they said that this recorded several parameters, including engine parameters, and I would have thought that they would have said something about the fact if they had noted anything unusual about the operation of the engines, and they didn't. So I don't know if fuel contamination or fuel starvation or anything like that is even, maybe I'm just inferring too much by the fact that they just kind of mentioned that.
Well, funny you should mention that, because that's exactly where my mind was going when I heard that it was a private fuel tank as opposed to one that might be undergoing more rigorous checks if you were selling fuel and had to obey a whole raft of regulations involved in that. A private fuel tank may not be subject to quite so many inspections and regulations, not to suggest that that was the cause, but that's the first thing that went through my head. He refueled there, didn't come from a regular source, so I wonder if there was some contamination, because it's about the only way you're going to lose all your engine power one of the classic ways is through fuel contamination. But then again, I'm exactly with you when they mentioned right at the end that no engine abnormalities were noted in the data. Then you go, okay, well, just to take them at their a word there, and assume that the engines were running fine. And since the gust locks weren't footed, you've got to go, well, that was another thought I had. So I'm kind of running out of reasons for this. 130 knots does not seem an unusually high speed to reject takeoff from for this type of aircraft, even on this runway length. So I'm going, I wonder why they ran off the end, and I wonder how much runway they consumed up to that point. I'm wondering if perhaps they had done the equivalent of a reduced thrust takeoff, which seems unusual perhaps for an aircraft of this type. We've got Pip in the chat room. I wonder if he regularly does that form of engine power reduction on takeoff. I would have thought it would unlikely, but you never know. And, I'm running out of the classic reasons for why this dreadful accident should have happened.
I will say that in the report they did mention that they started the rejected takeoff about 3,000. They started decelerating 3,000 feet from the beginning of the takeoff roll, and they had 2,100 feet remaining. So they were a little bit beyond halfway down the runway when they initiated the rejected takeoff. And the other thing is, I think, I was going to say, that's what Pip is saying in our live audience. I thought 130 knots in a Hondajet would be really fast, way beyond past V1, and that's what Pip is saying as well. So, I would have thought that.
I'm curious, Pip, perhaps Pip can tell us, would that be past the normal rotate speed? Or would they still be trundling on, all three wheels at that point? But, it's all right. That is, I kind of imagine they'd be getting a little faster than that to actually get airborne, but obviously perhaps not.
Yeah, it's quite a small little jet. And I think that the approach stall speeds or whatever are like below 100 knots, like 80 something.
Okay, that low.
90, yeah, something like that. Oh, I'm looking at these
they reached
deer outside my
130 knots
window.
and decided they couldn't fly. Oh, you got a guest?
Yeah, I feel like I'm at Steph's lakeside cottage because I'm seeing a very smart, handsome-looking buck, and I'm talking about a deer,
Lots of horns?
not a human.
Is he horny?
It's definitely a horny deer, and a doe, and this is cool. Lots of nature around here. No, I've had my fill of venison in my life.
Here's another comment from Pip.
Okay. Pip says, I don't blank the Hondajet. Maybe I don't fly the Hondajet, but I would expect V1 and rotate to be less than 110, maybe under 100 knots. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well,
so
I'm wondering if they'd actually got airborne and put it back down, that might account for the overrun. Because that would take a lot of runway, or they got to that speed and were unable to get airborne for some reason, and decided to reject as a result. We're still both left guessing, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Well, we'll just have to see what the final report says.
Yep, that's this. A lot of times in the preliminary, when Liz and I were discussing this yesterday, a lot of times they say certain things in the prelim, and then they go, I see where they're going with this, and then the final comes out and they don't even talk about that, what they mentioned in the prelim. I think, did they do that on purpose just to throw us off? I don't know. Okay. Thank you, Tim.
I don't think it's their job to mess about with this, Jeff.
Yeah, I know. I think so. Tim says my audio level has improved. I bumped it up pretty much all I could. So hopefully my audio is a little bit better. All right. You know what? I meant to mention this too. That was one of those things I was trying to remember what to talk about with Captain Nick and Liz before we started the recording today. And that is, I don't know how familiar or if it's being reported at all over on your side of the pond, Captain Nick, but there have been some strange goings-ons in the New Jersey area of our country involving drones. And
we do have some
feedback.
I picked up on some of those reports. Nothing in our news about it, but some aviation news has mentioned it, yes.
Okay. So, Liz, you said we have some feedback regarding that?
We do. We have number 7 in the feedback from Chris Ryerson.
Number 7.
Who was a New Jersey native.
Oh, okay, good.
President.
Well, then I'll talk about it then, instead of saying something about it now. I just thought of it, though, and thinking, I don't see it on our news lineup, so, but cool. Yeah, all right. We'll save it. Then I think now we can move on to the next item in our news lineup, and this is a final bulletin from this was published in the Aviation Herald. A TUI Airways Boeing 737-800 registration Golf Foxtrot Delta Zulu Sierra, performing flight 6114 from Bristol in the UK to Las Palmas in Spain with 163 passengers and 6 crew, was departing Bristol's runway 9 when the auto throttle disengaged upon selection of toga at the start of the takeoff roll. The crew manually set the thrust to 84.5% N1 rather than 92.8% N1 as was determined prior to the takeoff, and they continued the takeoff. The aircraft rotated about 260 meters prior to the end of the runway, crossed the end of the runway at 10 feet above ground level. The crew continued the flight to Las Palmas, although whenever they tried to engage autothrust, it disconnected again. The aircraft landed safely in Las Palmas. The Air Accidents Investigation Branch released a special bulletin, and this was earlier in the investigation, and they mentioned in the narrative that I just read that when the crew selected toga, 84.5% was set, and that was what they manually set, and that wasn't enough. And so after the takeoff, I think they realized, wow, we were really close to the end of the runway. What's going on? What did we do wrong? Or what happened there? The final bulletin published on the 5th of December concluded that the probable causes of this serious incident were having selected the toga switch to begin the takeoff roll, or that's interesting, a misspelling there, R-O-L-E or R-O-L-L. I'm thinking the latter. At Bristol, the autopilot disconnected. The crew reselected the auto throttles, but did not engage in an active mode and did not control the throttles as the crew expected. Neither crew realized that the thrust was not set as required for takeoff, but was significantly less than had been calculated during the pre-flight preparation. That was a word I was looking for earlier, calculated. As a result, the aircraft performance was significantly compromised. The uncommanded disconnection was likely caused by low voltage being supplied to the ASM, the autothrottle servo motor, which caused it to disconnect from the throttles. The issue is a well-known one, for which a new model of ASM updated FCC software incorporating changes to reduce the incidence of uncommanded disconnects. So I guess this is something that's happened in the past, which you'd think if the crew was aware of this, that they would have spent even more attention ensuring that the power was set properly. The operator took action to raise awareness of the issue and what actions are expected, as well as strengthening their FDM program to better monitor the occurrences. The manufacturer encourages any operators who experience nuisance disconnects to replace the autopilot servo motor with the newer model and ensure a later standard of FCC software loaded. It's on sale. I think a Black Friday sale, special price, about 50% off from Boeing.com. Yeah, so that's, and I think at some point I thought I read that part of their standard operation procedure is to ensure whether or not the auto throttle system is actively engaged or not. You always, trust but verify. And I think that they just somehow skipped the step of ensuring that the power, the N1 setting, was where it was supposed to be for takeoff. I mean, I'm sure, Captain Nick, you're probably thinking of some accidents in the past that involved the improper setting of takeoff power. There's been more than one, but the one that comes to mind to me is the one in Washington, D.C., Air Florida, where they were taking off another 737. Coincidence? I don't know. And they were, it was snowing, and they were taking off, I think, on runway, I think it was 19, or maybe, I don't know, maybe runway 1. I don't remember which direction they were taking off. But anyway, they didn't set, well, the whole airport is like along the river, basically. But they didn't have the thrust set properly, and they didn't have enough power to make a safe takeoff, and they ended up in the river. But anyway, that's what I wanted to say about that. What would you say about this, Captain Nick?
Well, yeah, that dreadful accident, just sparks a dreadful memory in my head. I remember driving over the bridge of the Potomac, right beside where that aircraft had gone into the river, and remembering the appalling pictures from the TV crews that were there trying to drag the passengers who were drowning and freezing in the ice-laden Potomac, while the emergency crews, the firemen and other people standing around being prevented from diving in to try and assist because their superiors were saying they hadn't undergone the correct safety training to do that kind of a job, whereas there were guys who were just passers-by who were stripping off and jumping in the river to save these people. And it was absolutely tragic, and a lot has changed since then. But yeah, that was a classic case of a company not used to operating in really bad weather, and they didn't do a proper de-ice, and what's more, they got icing in the engine. They hadn't put the engine anti-ice on, and that was an absolute no-no. I mean, that's ridiculous. And one of the pressure sensors in the front of the engines had iced up and gave them a false reading for the engine pressure ratio. Anyway, that's another just a really dreadful series of mistakes. This one is similar in the case of the fact that they had much more power available to them, as did the crew that crashed in the Potomac, but they never thought of moving the throttles up to the correct power setting. I mean, as they were trolling down the runway and they realized that they were getting very close to the end of the runway, I find it hard to understand why they didn't move the thrust levers forward and give themselves more power, because they had they had assumed the aircraft would be setting this power setting, the correct power setting. They didn't spot the fact that the auto throttle hadn't taken command of the engines properly, and left them where the pilots left them when they took their hands off them, thinking that the auto thrust would increase them to 92.8, and they never moved further than 84.5, which is considerably lower. They were very lucky to get away with this.
Nick, they always work, and except when they don't.
Yeah, exactly right. They always work, except we still check.
Yes.
That is the whole point of the discipline of the job. Regardless of how reliable you think something is, you still say the words, you still read the numbers, and you still think, is that right? Yeah, okay, that's good. That's the correct number. And we do it in the Airbus, despite the fact the Airbus has many backups that will actually alarm you if the correct setting has not been achieved. So a plus the fact that you can just look at the gauges and see for yourself, and we say it out loud, and you know, that's common for every type. And there are an awful lot of pilots out there listening to this, I'm sure, who are going, oh, yeah, that was a dreadful mistake. Yeah, dreadful.
10 feet is really low. Woo.
Yeah, 10 feet above the end of the runway is, what is it? They have to be a minimum of 35 feet crossing the...
the fence height, dry runway is 35. On a wet runway, it's 15 from memory. So, yeah, they to stagger off the end that close to being... Having said that, I watched the video of a Russian... aircraft, 4-engine tail, VC-10 ski, some kind of Evolution, that literally had 5 feet to spare when his main wheels came off. I was going, whoa, that was close.
That was better than the Airwork 727 that we watched the security video of a couple of shows ago, where they were at zero at the end of the runway.
Yeah, I know. So, it happens, but, you know, that's the whole point of being a well-disciplined and well-organized and well-trained company. The fact that you develop these procedures and you follow them to the letter.
It happens to the best of us. I remember early on in my career with a certain airline that we were taking off out of Minneapolis in a 727. I was the flight engineer, and we took off like we always do. And I was looking out the window going, I don't feel like we're accelerating at the normal rate. The end of the runway is looking really, you know, it's getting bigger.
Short.
Yeah, looking like a very short runway. And then we took off, and then after we cleaned everything up and we were on our way and talking to departure control, the captain kind of looked around and goes, yeah, Jeff, can you hand me that takeoff data, you know, and all the calculations and everything else? And so I handed it to him, and he goes, he said, I took off from an intersection, not full length, and the numbers were based on full length.
Full length. And,
yeah, so I know that feeling that you have when you're in that middle, or after the fact, when you're going, something just did not feel right. And I think that's what this crew experienced, and good on them for reporting it. You know, I don't know if this would have been something that would have been discovered without them reporting it, or if they just realized, okay, this is what do they call it? Just culture, a safety culture.
Yeah.
And it's best that we go ahead and volunteer the fact that we screwed things up, and maybe somebody can learn from it, and maybe they won't try to take my license away so that I can continue to pay the bills, you know, so.
Yeah, exactly. So kudos to them for that. I remember getting my first takeoff out of Cape Town. You know, I was a new captain, and it was my first landing and first takeoff out there. And because it was my first, I was obliged to do both the landing and the takeoff. Anyway, the landing went fine. A few days later, after we'd wined and dined ourselves, and we were absolutely exhausted from the amount that we ate and drank, we clambered back on the airplane to get airborne. And we went rolling down this runway at Cape Town, and we had all the numbers. We assumed they were correct. We'd done them all. But I was looking down the runway thinking, good blimey, this runway looks a bit short. So out of instinct, I firewalled the engines. I banged them from flex up to toga, and off we went. And about 5 seconds later, we went over a bump in the runway.
Oh, yeah.
I hadn't realised was there. And, you know, 10,000 feet more runway appeared. And I went, oh.
And then you looked around and said,
a bit of an overreaction.
Nothing? I don't know what you're talking about.
So there you go. Yeah, but I mean, I was on the safe side. That's all I can say.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, when it just doesn't feel right, you know, you just got to, you know, react.
Oh,
and not
do
just
something.
Do something.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Let's continue on then with another one from the Aviation Herald website, another final report, and this one from Down Under. or what did AJ say? Over and under, or something like that. And let's see. This is an Airwork 737 -400 freighter. Registration Zulu or Z Kilo. No, it would be Zulu because this is phonetic alphabet, avionic, or aviation. Zulu Kilo Tango Lima Lima. See what you guys have me doing? I'm always afraid that when I'm saying Z, that I'm saying something wrong.
And you should be afraid.
Yeah.
Afraid.
Yeah, I should be afraid of you guys. Anyway, Zulu Kilo Tango Lima Lima performing flight 2 from Sydney, Australia to Auckland, New Zealand, with 2 crew, completed a seemingly uneventful flight with a safe landing in Auckland, when, during taxiing to the apron, the crew discovered that they still had a full center fuel tank, while the 2 main fuel tanks supplying the engines had only minimum fuel left. The crew thus noticed that the 2 center fuel pumps had remained off for the duration of the flight. New Zealand's investigatory agency, TAIC, released their final report, concluding that the flight crew omitted to turn on the center fuel pumps. Yep, that's what they volunteered before starting the aircraft. Oh, they omitted to turn on the center fuel pumps before starting the aircraft and did not detect that the fuel in the center tank had not been used until after landing in Auckland, when a main fuel pump low pressure light illuminated. So they didn't even know it until they saw the main fuel pump low pressure light illuminate. That's not good. The requirement to reprogram and plan their departure due to a runway change and the approaching curfew added to the pressure the flight crew were under, and very likely contributed to distraction when they were completing the before start checklist. That's a major safety issue that I think we've all kind of experienced. Like, oh, we got to hurry up and go. If the aircraft had flown a go-around from the approach into Auckland, it's likely that the fuel in the main tanks would have been exhausted during the maneuver. The Operator's Operation Control Center, the OCC staff, did not provide updated weather forecasts or flight plans to the crew prior to extended diversion time operation EDTO sectors as required by the operator's OCC manual. I'm not sure what that means. The operator's flights number 2 and number 82 departed for Auckland with flight plans nominating destination and EDTO alternates that were not compliant with regulatory or company flight planning requirements. Okay, so this is probably stuff revealed in the investigation here that didn't necessarily directly impact the operation of this particular flight.
Yeah, I don't think everyone realizes that when these investigative authorities look into an incident, they don't limit themselves just to the factors of the incident. They look at every aspect of the airline operation and operations and the data they get, everything. And they pick up, and quite rightly, even though it wasn't really a factor, they mention where things have been done not compliant with their regulations.
I guess you could compare that to, in the legal world, a deposition, right? If you're in a deposition, then you open up everything, right? And everything is available for both parties to look at.
Yeah.
No, discovery.
Yeah,
maybe.
If you're driving
discovery.
a car and you get stopped for a tail light that's broken, the guy's going to look at everything else in the car as well, your wheels and everything. Because he can now zap you for all sorts if your car's badly maintained.
Okay, so the important part of this report, though, I think we should focus on is the actual operation of the flight itself, with the fuel issue, with the center fuel switches not being turned on. Turns out that, so they did the smart thing as, commencing the approach, the visibility was still fluctuating, but above the required minimum. But as a precaution, the crew briefed for and conducted an auto land. Okay, that's smart. If flight number 2 had subsequently flown a go-around from this approach due to the low visibility, fuel consumption would have increased rapidly because of the engine's high power demands. The fuel on shutdown was noted as 4640 kilograms, and with 4,000 kilograms reported in the center tank. That left 640 kilograms in the main tanks. The operator advised that the guidelines for the Boeing 737 stated that 640 kilograms would be used for a go-around and further approach. Happened to be the exact same number.
Convenient number.
Yeah. Coincidence? I don't know.
Everything's fine. I've got exactly the right fuel.
Wow. Consequently, it's very likely that during a go-around maneuver, the master caution light and fuel low pressure light would have activated as fuel in the main tanks neared exhaustion. In this scenario, there was no checklist or procedure that would have directed the flight crew to turn on the center pumps, as checklist logic would have assumed that the center fuel had already been used. That
would surprise me, Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because if you've got a low fuel pressure, indicating that you're running out of fuel in the main tanks, all the Airbus procedures required you to put on the fuel pumps for every other tank in the damned aeroplane, including the ones that were indicating zero, just to try and, if you had made a mistake, to pick up on it, and if you hadn't made a mistake, just to get any dregs that were left in those tanks transferred into the tanks that needed the fuel. So I'm really surprised that their procedure didn't require them to turn those center pumps on.
I'll bet it has been changed.
Yeah,
just
but
guessing.
How long has the 737 been around?
Oh, forever. Yeah. But I'm not sure, if this is their own checklist or was this the Boeing checklist?
Oh, okay. It could have been an airline-specific checklist.
Yeah, it could be. I don't know.
Yes.
It doesn't really say. Yeah.
Correct, yes.
Anyway, so they said that it would have required the flight crew to analyze the situation and determine that fuel was available in the center tank, which would have been challenging given the high workload of flying a go-around and possible diversion. Therefore, there would have been a very real potential for an engine failure if a go-around had been required. The captain had recognized this and commented that, quote, the risk that we put ourselves in by not turning those pumps on was that if we had to do a go-around, we would put ourselves in a situation that may have been critical. Yeah. No kidding.
Yeah.
But you're right, Captain Nick. I mean, that should have been just automatic. If you're having a fuel feed issue, would just turn all the pumps that you have on. I mean, I know there's some risk to turning on pumps and fuel tanks that are empty, but I think in this case, that risk is outweighed by maybe we just forgot to turn pumps on and we actually do have a lot of fuel somewhere. Let's just, make sure everything is on and figure out what's going on.
No, I agree. And I have to compliment the captain here for saying what he said, because he's obviously put his hand on his heart and gone, yeah, I recognize entirely how dangerous the situation was that we could have got ourselves into. But I also say that if he's in a high workload situation and he's would have got warnings, if it had been in the checklist for his low fuel pressure warnings to do this, then he would have done it. So he wouldn't have got distracted by the pressure of the situation he was in, because one of them would have done that drill from top to bottom, because that's what we're always trained to do, regardless. And they would have then put the pumps on. So I'm going to give him an awful lot of leeway here, because that procedure should have been in the checklist.
Yeah, it should have. And I give him kudos as well, because I think this is one of those cases where, all the snitch systems and data recorders and everything else going on, I'm not sure would have picked up what had happened here. And the fact that had they had to perform a go around and another approach, that it would have been a very, very serious situation. And so he thought, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and fess up, and maybe somebody can learn from this. And that's why we're talking about it on our show.
Exactly. Yep.
Which is excellent. All right. Next item, again, from the Aviation Herald, another report, this one a preliminary report on a Rex, also down under in Melbourne. Saab 340 Bravo was performing flight 3937 from Melbourne to King Island. Is that Tasmania, TA, I guess?
Yep.
Australia.
That's right.
23 passengers. So that requires you to that Tasmania is kind of off, is not part of the continent, right? There is like an island.
Yeah, it's an island off the south coast,
Gotcha.
the south east corner of Australia.
Yeah, they would have had to fly over over water. Okay.
70 or 100 miles away.
Okay,
so
not a
it's
lot.
Not a huge
but,
distance.
Okay. They had 23 passengers and 3 crew. They were preparing for departure. The right-hand engine had been started, and the crew was about to start the left-hand engine when the ground staff disconnected the ground power unit, interrupting the left engine start sequence. I hate it when they do that. The crew began motoring the left-hand engine to remove any residual fuel, which is smart. You don't want a tailpipe fire. However, as soon as the propeller began to rotate...
probably got...
yeah. However, as soon as the propeller began to rotate, the ground marshaller signaled to stop the engine start, due to seeing flames and smoke from the left-hand engine. The captain stopped the engine start. The crew noticed the ITT was... What does that stand for? Something turbine temp,
Something turbine temperature.
Yeah. Was still
intermediate or initial turbine temperature.
Yeah. Anyway, something out there that senses turbine temperature.
Yes, something hot in the back end.
Yeah. Was still rising, prompting the captain to again perform motoring of the engine. The marshaller continued to signal to the crew to stop the engine start. Despite the absence of any fire or abnormal indication on the engine, the captain decided to work the engine fire checklist and initiated an evacuation through the right-hand door. 2 passengers received minor injuries in the evacuation. This happened back in April of 2022, when they had a, the prelim was on the 15th of November 2022. Really doesn't talk. Well, let me scroll down to the, this is a final report, isn't it? No, it's still a preliminary report. That's weird.
They're taking their time, aren't they?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. It is a final report. Okay. It's just the title. Okay. The title was misleading. Okay. So on the 4th of December, so about a week ago, the Australian Transportation Safety Board released their final report. Let's see. Ground crew member disconnected the power unit without having been signaled to do so. That's kind of what set this whole thing off. This happened while the left engine was still starting, which resulted in an interrupted engine start and the initial development of an engine tailpipe fire. After observing the marshaller's signals, the captain stopped motoring the engine. As a result, the fire was not extinguished. The captain did not coordinate with the first officer their identification of or response to the interrupted engine start or the later fire signals from the marshaller. This limited the opportunity for the first officer to contribute to the identification and management of the ongoing situation. So not good communication between the captain and first officer. Likely associated with increased stress and an escalating sense of urgency, the captain ordered an evacuation without having used all the available information to positively confirm the severity of the situation. Other factors: the marshaller used non-standard signals when communicating indications of fire to the flight crew. Rex Regional Express did not provide flight crew or ground crew recurrent training to review the hand signals required to communicate with each other, including those used in an emergency. It's a big problem. Before ordering the evacuation, the captain did not communicate their intent to evacuate the aircraft to the first officer or call for flight deck evacuation drills. In addition, the captain initially did not use the primary method of commanding an evacuation through the public address system. When the captain signaled to the cabin to evacuate using 4 seatbelt sign chimes, the flight attendant did not recognize the signal and subsequently did not react to the command.
A lot of Funyuns.
Yeah. When ordered to evacuate, there were no instructions provided to passengers to direct them to use all the available exits. As a result, the passengers in the emergency exit row did not open a usable exit, which delayed the evacuation of the aircraft. And the captain did not initially communicate the situation to air traffic control, which delayed the arrival of emergency services at the aircraft by about 2 minutes. And, I can't believe this, some passengers took cabin baggage during the evacuation, which increased the risk of injury and delaying the evacuation. Yeah, wow. There are a lot of things went wrong. I think when he initially ordered the evacuation to the cabin crew, he did it by opening the door and yelling at them to evacuate instead of using the PA system, which is kind of weird.
That's true, but initially he did a double ding on the seatbelt signs to give 4 chimes, which he had thought was evacuation signal, which the cabin crew didn't recognize.
Yeah. Now, I don't know, maybe that really is a signal and the cabin crew didn't
possibly
recognize it, or maybe he just making stuff up on the fly or something. I don't know.
If I keep ringing this bell, something's going to happen.
They're going to bring me tea.
Oh, dear. Yeah, I mean, it was a bit of a shambles, wasn't it, really? I mean, starting off with the signals from the ground crew, and, well, just basically the actions of the ground crew were dreadful because, you know, you go to yourself, oh, for heaven's sake, why did you pull the external power without being told to? Why did you tell me to shut the engine down, give me a signal to shut the engine down when actually a jet pipe fire, you do exactly the opposite. You motor the engine to blow the fire, continue to blow the fire through the jet pipe until all the fuel has been burned. And if you shut the engine down, it just sits and cooks inside the engine, which is what they noticed because the engine had fuel in it and they saw the intermediate turbine temperature rising, indicating the engine was getting hotter and hotter. And then despite the fact that the ground crew were now still signalling shut the engine down, which is not his decision. He tells the captain there's a fire, and it's from memory, and it's been a long time for me, it's a kind of a figure of 8. It used to be our signal, certainly in the Air Force, that like an infinity signal. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was to indicate you had a fire. Shutting down is the cut your throat signal.
Right.
So, yeah.
Or if they're running away really fast. It's probably
they're on fire.
They're on fire.
That's the classic, isn't it? Exactly. But, in today's, modern communication, why on earth don't these smaller aircraft have people on headsets plugged in talking to the ground crew? I mean, we do it all on the big airplanes, but not on this little thing, apparently. So why? It's stupid not to, because this sort of miscommunication becomes almost impossible to achieve when you're actually speaking to someone, and the captain can go, "Where's the flame coming from?" It's coming from the back end, sir. The jet pipe? Yes. Okay, well, I'm going to continue motoring, all right? You watch and tell me what happens. Life is so much simpler when you can speak to someone, and mouthing to the captain that you're on fire. You go, what? I haven't learned that. I can hear. I don't need to lip read, so I don't understand that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Wow.
So it's classic. The sort of thing ought to be taught for
it was a cluster.
How to fix communication problems and how communication issues can build up into quite a serious situation where this aircraft could have continued to burn and become seriously damaged.
Yeah, I agree. Welcome everyone in our live audience that kind of missed the start time change. We apologize. It was very last minute, but we're glad that you're here with us. Just didn't feel right without you.
I see some podcasters in there. I see Pip, Pilot Pip, although he's a lapsed podcast maker. So I think Pip needs to get his poop in a pile, if you don't mind me doing a bit of alliteration there.
A lot of alliteration, yeah. Pilot
But
Pip,
we also
poop in a
have
pile.
Bob Judson, the fine fellow whose friendship has extended to me being able to interview Colin. Today's Plain Tale is part of it with him up in the Air Force Club just the other day. And I'm going to remind everyone that Leading for Life is his podcast, so have a search for that. And if you're interested in his stories of his fantastic Air Force career and his stories of leadership, and he's a master of teaching the ins and outs of leadership in the industry, I think are definitely worth listening to. So have a look.
There's Bill in YYZ. Hello, Bill, airline pilot based in Toronto. And wielding
wow.
the blue spanner of death is our main man, Micah.
He hasn't hit anyone with it lately, has
I don't
he?
know. Haven't been paying close attention, although there were some that were in the chat room earlier that are no longer there, so maybe main man Micah's going crazy with that spanner of death.
He cleared them all out.
Anyway, so I just wanted to say hello to everyone and welcome aboard. And I think we should probably continue with another piece of
absolutely.
news.
Oh, can I just make the point?
Yes.
That, was it this one? No. I misread this. You know, I read earlier on in this report, it said initial flames were visible on the CCTV for about 3 seconds, and I thought, oh, good Lord, has this Saab 340 got closed circuit television cameras
that would be nice.
Mounted in it? No, I think they were probably the ones on the
airport
stand
property
or on the airport. So I went, damn. I was hoping that we might have at last produced an airliner with video cameras recording
sadly,
what goes on.
not yet. That's not important.
Not.
Yeah. All right. Very good. So let's continue on with this video from, what is it called? You Can See ATC or something like that? Yeah. All right. Let's find out together, shall we? This happened on the 12th of November, 2024 in New York, 5:53 local time. So kind of probably getting sort of dark. A JetBlue Airbus A320 was performing flight 1644 from Kralenjijk Flamingo International Airport, Bonaire, let's just say that, to John F. Kennedy International. Yay, our favorite airport. Being on approach to Kennedy was vectored by the air traffic controller to go underneath the heavy Boeing 787 Dreamliner with 1,000 feet vertical separation. When the pilot requested to change the route, they didn't want to go below the heavy traffic because of wake turbulence. The controller didn't have time and offered to talk after landing.
JetBlue 1644, turn right heading 080.
Right turn 080, JetBlue 1644.
Delta 007, correction, Delta 18, disregard. Last aircraft calling, say again.
LL 007, 6000, descending 4.
LL 007, heavy near approach, reduce speed at 210.
210, speed LL 007.
JetBlue 1644, turn left heading 050.
050 heading, JetBlue 1644.
They're basically head on.
007 heavy, reduce speed to 210, vector class final for spacing.
Over.
LL 007 heavy, vectors across final for spacing, reduce speed to 210.
Reducing 210, LL 007.
JetBlue 1644, traffic 12 o'clock, 7 miles southwestbound, 4,000 heavy, Boeing 780 setting on your sequence.
Okay, yeah, we see him straight ahead. Thanks, JetBlue 1644.
Good boy.
LL 007, we're crossing the localizer now.
No, 007 heavy, vector class final for spacing.
Copy, thanks.
Which he already said twice.
And JetBlue 1644, we'd like to turn away from underneath the heavy wake here. We need to turn out to the east.
Wait, say that again?
We'd like to turn out to the east. You're putting us right underneath the heavy, 1,000 feet underneath them. I don't know where you expect us to be flying, but we're going right underneath this guy.
Yeah, I'm looking at the radar. You got 1,000 feet. You want 2,000?
No, I just like maybe a 5-degree. We're nose to nose with this guy, and I'm assuming that there's going to be a wake turbulence encounter here in a few minutes if we don't make a turn away. You said they were vectoring him across. I just didn't know how far we could expect to be going.
That was a lot. I can give you a number to call. We can talk about it after if you'd like. LL 7 heavy, flighting 270.
Heading 270, LL 7 heavy.
Triple 1644, speed 160, heading 360.
Speed 160, heading 360, JetBlue 1644.
LL 7 heavy, turn right 090.
090, LL 7 heavy.
Triple 1644, heading 330, intercept 31 right localizer.
330 heading, intercept 31 right localizer, JetBlue 1644.
LL 7 heavy, speed 180, then maintain 2000.
180, descend 2000, LL 7 heavy.
LL 7 heavy, rollout heading 070, flighting 070.
070, LL 007.
Allow 7 heavy, menu altitude 3,000.
3,000 descending, allow 07.
JetBlue 1644, descend to 2,000 now.
I descend to 2,000, JetBlue 1644.
Allow 7 heavy, descend to 2,000.
Descend 2,000, allow 7 heavy.
On JetBlue 1644, clear ILS 31 right, 160 knots.
160 knots, say again, please, for JetBlue 1644.
Cleared ILS runway 31 right.
Cleared ILS runway 31 right, JetBlue 1644.
Allow 7 heavy, speed 160.
160, allow 7 heavy.
Allow 7 heavy, heading 060, vector cross localizer.
060, allow 07.
JetBlue 1644, you're going to maintain 160 knots till the 6-mile final. You're following a heavy Airbus 330. Caution wake turbulence. You got 6.7 miles there.
Okay, 160 knots until 6-mile final, JetBlue 1644.
Go to tower now, 19-1, 1644.
19-1, JetBlue 1644. And tower, good evening, JetBlue 1644, 14 miles out for 31 right.
JetBlue 1644, Kennedy Tower, good evening. Number 3, caution wake turbulence on a heavy A330, 7 miles final. The wind 360 at 14. Be advised, wind shear gain and loss, 10 knots to the surface. Runway 31 right, clear to land.
31 right, clear to land, JetBlue 1644.
It's showing there. JetBlue landing.
JetBlue 1644, left when able, left turn Bravo, stay with me.
Left turn when able, left on Bravo, stay with you, JetBlue 1644.
And JetBlue 1644, you can actually join Alpha, left turn Alpha, please.
Left turn Alpha, JetBlue 1644.
And when you get a moment, New York Approach wants you to give him a call. I have a number when you're ready.
Ready.
JetBlue 1644, the number is...
Yeah, so basically what happened here is you have the LL7 heavy coming in from, you can remove that from stage if you want.
Yes, sir.
Coming in from the northeast, and the JetBlue coming in from the southwest. And they're both being essentially vectored for the same runway, same approach. They just, approach control needed to get a little bit more spacing. So she told LL7 2 times that to fly this heading, and that they were going to be vectored through the localizer. And I don't know if there was a language barrier there, or if there was a lot going on inside the LL cockpit, and they just didn't hear that little bit of information. And then finally they seemed concerned because they were going through the localizer. Hey, we're approaching the localizer. And then she said, yes, again, she didn't say it like that. She was very nice. She wasn't snarky at all. She must be new. So, but the JetBlue coming in from the south sees the pointed out traffic, the heavy jet coming at them. The heavy is at 4,000 feet. They're at 3,000 feet. So there's 1,000 feet of spacing. He was just a little concerned that there might be some wake turbulence that he may encounter. I'm not sure if it would have been that concerning to me at those speeds close in to the airport, honestly, but maybe it's just I'm misremembering how things work in the approach environment. But it was of concern to the JetBlue flight, and there was a lot of communication going on, a lot of words being said, and that's when I think the controller finally said, "Okay, that was a lot. Let's just talk about this afterwards," that's the proper thing to do, right? If you have a problem. But by the time they expressed all of this, I'm not sure that they ended up getting any kind of a separation at all for a potential wake turbulence encounter or not. It's hard to tell with these videos because, as they mention in the preamble, that the positions are not necessarily exact because they're not using the actual readouts from the radar displays. It's all simulated for us. But so, what do you think, Nick? Do you think that was something, a good precaution that the JetBlue was concerned about, or do you think that he should have just kept his mouth shut and, continued flying the instruction?
Die like a man. Yes, I think.
Shut up and die like a man.
Exactly. Well, I flew heavies my entire civil career, so I was the one usually giving the wake turbulence, not receiving it. But I was never ever concerned in this sort of a situation. These guys have a pretty hard job trying to jigsaw all this traffic in to getting the right separation, and the sort of wake turbulence clearance they're concerned about is nose to tail separation and time when you're on the approach, specifically really when you're in the landing maneuver, so that you don't hit the wake turbulence of the guy ahead. It's had a chance to move off the runway or dissipate. You're not really concerned when you're up at 2,000 or 3,000 feet. He did offer or kind of suggest that, he could give him 2,000 foot separation if he wanted it. But he seemed to be really concerned that 1,000 feet wasn't enough, considering he had a 787 going over the top of him. And I mean, God, lummy, we fly with 1,000 foot separation everywhere now, if you're in RVSM airspace, and certainly at lower levels. And generally speaking, it's not a problem. We often fly with only 500 feet separation when we're going over GA aircraft. If we're sort of in open airspace, like you might be around Newark or somewhere, a lot of light aircraft flying around, a lot of airliners, outside controlled airspace positioning.
And they get flipped over, right and left when you guys do that.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but it's really, we don't consider it an issue. Mm-hmm. So I'm a little surprised he was worried. Sorry, the lady wife is just arriving back from her night out. Yeah. I'm on my own in the house right now, but not for long. Exactly. I think he's overreacting a little, personally.
Mm-hmm. I do too.
He might have had an occurrence which worried him previously.
That's exactly what Harry said in the chat.
Yeah. And we know that a 380 turned an exec jet upside down over the Red Sea at some point and out of the Gulf area. Right. And that caused a lot of problems.
Much higher speeds involved there. So the intensity of the wake was, 1,000 feet, going, however many knots or Mach, whatever. That's
85% of the speed of sound. Yeah.
Then I would be, yes, perfect. How did you know that? But in that case, I would be concerned, but in the approach environment, the speeds are much lower. So the generated intensity of these wakes is lower. And as you said, the thing to be concerned about is when you're following traffic, and you're getting even slower in landing configuration and everything closer to the ground. Yeah. But again, I agree with you, Nick. I was wondering if you'd feel the same, but I thought, I don't know. I think this guy's maybe getting a little bit too concerned for this.
Bill.
But let's see, Bill in YYZ says, narrow body world can be different. My buddy in a 320 had a severe wake turbulence encounter in terminal airspace, put a flight attendant on the ceiling, descended at 5,500 feet per minute, less than 2,500 feet above ground level. I mean, I'm not saying, well, thank you, Bill, for that. I'm not saying that it can't happen, but I don't know. As Captain Nick said, even Kennedy controllers are pretty good at working these situations, and they know what the winds are and everything else. And I don't know. Yeah, again, maybe that was completely justified. I don't know, but I think the controller did the right thing, which, I think that, give them credit when credit's due by saying, hey, look, I understand your concern and everything else, and you're saying a lot more than we need, because there's all these big giant pieces of metal hurtling through the sky at very high speed, and my job is to keep everybody from hitting each other. So can we talk about it after, once you're on the ground, and, let me give you a phone number to call, and we'll work this out, talk this out. But that's the way to do it. So I don't know. That's my
opinion. I agree. So a 320, I don't really consider. I mean, it's in the light category, but I don't really consider that a small airplane. It's it's not that much smaller than a 330. and that's a heavy. So
if you're in the Cessna 172, that's a big airplane.
Exactly. And let's not forget, everyone is strapped in, and should be probably, including the cabin crew at this point. So no one should be going flying around the aircraft, even if you were to, get bumped by some.
The operative word there, though, is should be seated with seatbelts on.
Yes.
But we've all seen the flight attendants who think they're super women and men and not subject to the laws of physics and nature, and sometimes they're wrong. And as Bill on YYZ says, hitting an airplane does hurt more than wake turbulence. Yeah, but it doesn't hurt for very long, Bill. It's very quick.
Yeah. And you're right, Jeff. Although this happens very rarely, I am definitely siding on the side of the JFK controller system. I don't want to get a reputation here for being easy on them, but
good job. Shocking. All right. Now we have to try to make up for all the bad things we've said about them over the years. Okay.
Getting to know us.
All right. We're going to go ahead and shift to the Getting to Know Us segment right now. Here we go. Getting to Know Us. It's the time of the show where we get to find out what everybody has been up to between episodes. And I think Captain Nick was kind of or did you do the interview? You did the interview last time. So we actually talked about it last Getting to Know Us. And today we get to experience the fruit of that interview, right?
We are indeed, Jeff. And I was sort of prepping to go and do it. But since then, we've come away with the audio and been putting it together, and I've got my first 20-minute. I'm probably going to get 3 plain tales out of this, 3 20-minute bits. We'll see how the next half goes. But I tell you, it was kind of awe-inspiring to meet Colin, and because he is such a remarkably fit and dapper chap, and it's really hard to get in your mind that this gent is over 100 years old. Approaching his 104th birthday. He's 103 now. He's sharp. He remembers. His level of recall is fantastic. He's a lovely guy to speak to, just informally. And as he's recounting his exploits as a World War II pilot, it was fantastic. It was lovely to be back in the Air Force Club, which is just one of those super institutions that I used to belong to when I was a serving officer. I carried on for a couple of years, but I didn't use the facilities enough to be able to afford as a young first officer. It was just something that it was a bit frivolous. But it was lovely to go back. The place is like a living museum with Air Force officers all wandering around. People know each other and waving, and the artwork and the memorabilia that is scattered casually through the place. It is quite fantastic. So, it's like a big hotel combined with a gentleman's club full of lovely furniture, and it's beautifully decorated. So it is a super place. Yeah, it's a bit like a museum, as Liz says. So it was great to meet Bob and Colin there, and the gentleman who helps him around, accompanies him, who I think is a retired Army officer. But Mark was a lovely chap who took pictures of us all, and I'm going to be able to use some of those as well. The interview with Colin went fine. You'll be able to judge for yourselves in just a few minutes when we play it, and I'd love to read any comments that might be generated about it from the audience we've got in the chat room. But for me, it was a very, very special day, and one I shall remember forever.
Excellent.
Nick, you got to show us your sweater by standing up and showing them.
Oh, at least once a fashion show. Okay, I got this sweater from the Royal Air Force Museum, which we've both been to, but it has a Spitfire on it, so I'm going to stand up for a second. Yeah, it has a Spitfire, but if you look at the back...
Tally, ho, ho, ho.
Ho, ho, ho.
Great Christmas
So
sweater.
there you go. I thought that was a great Christmas. And thank you very much for this.
Roundels on it too, right?
Oh yeah, Air Force roundels everywhere. So and Spitfires and things. So thanks for the staff of the RAF Museum, because the first one I ordered was a bit small, so I sent it back and with a plea, and they gave it back to me in a larger size, almost by return of post, because I was worried it wouldn't arrive before Christmas. You know what it's like at the moment with postage. You know, it always gets busy. And the lovely lady up there turned it around and got it back to me straight away. So I'm proudly wearing my RAF Museum pullover.
It's very handsome.
Lovely.
Thanks.
Cover art? We'll do some cover art?
Yeah, let's look at some cover
Yeah,
art.
the cover art. Now, this is the second cockpit piece of cockpit cover art I've done in a row. So I need to find a different subject next time. But we had some good suggestions. Flying sideways. See what I did? Don't do that. Just a big mess. And Dog Skill Mountains. But the one that really I think was brilliant was the captain that tried to open the door and wanged on a whole heap of rudder trim by mistake instead of activating the door opening switch. And they momentarily struggled to keep the airplane upright, which I thought was a fantastic story. So he grabbed the wrong knob. So here we've got two aged and venerable pilots, one with a moustache and one with a beard. Yeah, so we can try and guess who they are. And the suggested title was Not That Knob. So he obviously had a bit of a stutter, this chap.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Yeah, calling it a knob.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you look on the shoulder flashes of the two venerable pilots we've got here, the logo was on the Captain Jeff character, and the show number was on the shoulder flash of the Captain Nick character.
A little bit harder to pick that one out. Yeah.
Well, that was the idea.
Yeah. And so these two fine-looking, venerable gentlemen have, looks like parachute harnesses on.
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't you if you were flying with us as pilots?
Yeah, that's probably prudent.
The cockpit, like they're flying back.
Yeah, we're looking backwards. Well, we're both looking at the young lady who's presumably entering the cockpit. And we've both got, there's a big red knob there. I don't know quite whose red knob that is.
Not sure. It doesn't look familiar to me, so it must be yours.
Oh, fair. Okay.
Nick, here's a comment from Bob that you probably want to read, maybe.
Mark is actually a former lawyer. Oh, yeah. The reason I thought that, Bob, that he was thought of a former army officer was that he mentioned that he had bedded down in the cavalry club next door. So I assumed he was in there because that's where he had served once. But no, I realised he was a lawyer. I thought perhaps that was his post-military career, but obviously I don't know enough about him. There you go.
Oh, and a very insulting comment from him about your sweater.
Yeah, I know. Well, Bob is actually a qualified Spitfire pilot, and one of his jobs was to be the station commander of RAF Coningsby, which is the home of the Battle of Britain Memorial flight, and he got the job of flying one of the Spitfires. So, I mean, anyone who got that chance would have wanted to crow about it forever. So he does mention Spitfires whenever he gets the opportunity, which is about every 30 seconds. So,
but you're stretching the dimensions with your
yeah,
jumper,
he's complaining about
I just think it's getting a bit of extra wingspan, which was always, it could probably have done with.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I keep needing to remind Bob that he's an ex-student of mine. So back in your box, Bob.
What have you been up to, Jeff?
Well, what I've been up to. So last show we recorded on Friday, I believe. No, Friday morning and Friday afternoon, I was singing in a funeral. Am I getting that right? I thought so.
I think you did the show on Thursday.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me look at the calendar here to see if you're right. No, it says Friday was we recorded the show. Okay. And that afternoon, I sang in a funeral. And next day, again, that was when I was, I think I mentioned it on the last show, I was asked to read out some names of some former passed away members of the band, the concert band, that I was present. So that went off pretty well. I think I only made one little flub, I think, and I made up a new instrument. I think one of the gentlemen was a trumpet player, and I said tumpet. So maybe people just thought I had a lisp or something. Not frumpet. I wasn't that bad. But anyway, so did that instead of the normal vigil mass singing on Saturday, and then Sunday back to the normal routine of singing. And Monday I got to visit with my daughter because the Honda Accord Sport that I had, I basically gifted her with that vehicle, and it was due for some maintenance and tires and that kind of thing. So I kind of helped, being an Uber service for my daughter. So that was nice. And then yesterday, David, when we had several days of rainy weather here, and then when the frontal system finally passed by, the winds started picking up quite considerably, and the temperatures started dropping pretty precipitously. And the trees, I think I may have mentioned that, or maybe I was just mentioning this to Liz, that there are a lot of beautiful trees here. And I've noticed a lot of them throughout the campground have toppled over the years. And I'm wondering, I hope one of these trees doesn't topple over on my rig, the RVS. And I was talking to one of the campground hosts as I was exiting the other day. And I said, hey, did any trees fall down? He goes, yep. As a matter of fact, site number 91. And he showed me a picture of this on his phone, and it T-boned a travel trailer. I mean, just crushed it.
Oh, good Lord.
And I said, was anybody injured? And he said, no, thankfully nobody was in the trailer at the time that the tree came down. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I'm hoping that if something like that happened to the Road Vessel studio, that this is made a little bit more heartily or sturdily, and it wouldn't completely kill me, flatten me if I were inside. But
you mean you don't have a roll bar in that thing?
No, but this thing is built pretty darn well. I mean, I think the ceiling at certain points are 5 feet, not 5 feet, 5 inches thick with insulation. That 5 feet thick would be that would be over engineering, I think. It'd be very tall.
Canadian craftsmanship.
Yeah. But anyway, so far no trees have fallen. And temperatures got down to about freezing last night, and I didn't have any issues. It's not winterized right now, so there's a buck chasing after a doe. I'm wondering why. I think it's still that time of year.
If you
anyway,
want to mention Roger's
I do want to mention that, Liz. So Radio Roger, our official APG announcer, provides me with the voiceover provides us with the voiceover for every show. And earlier today, he alerted me to the fact that was ready for me to download. And then he added at the end of it, by the way, I've come up with a stupid parlor trick for you. And I'm always looking for stupid parlor tricks. He said, I've tried it on a couple of people and it works. You tell folks you've memorized the direction of every runway in the world. You then ask a volunteer to pick an airport, and you look up the runway map, and you give the number of one of the runways, and you'll tell them which direction it points in. Warning, only try this with people who know nothing about flying. So, of course, Roger knows that, the direction that the runway's pointed is how they number the runway. So apparently there must be most people in the world that have no idea. And why would they? Why would they know that? Anyway, so that's pretty funny, Roger. Maybe people out there in APG land can give that a try and let us know how that went.
With all the family.
Yeah, Christmas dinner with all the family would be a good time to try that. Yeah. Okay.
Fun time.
Yeah, it is time for the Coffee Fund. Here we go.
Johnny, how much more coffee?
No thanks.
I love coffee. I love tea. I love the APG community. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup.
That's up there. Yeah. The Coffee Fund is your way to support the show financially if you desire to do that, and we'd certainly appreciate it. Couple of different ways to do it. You can find out about both ways by heading over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. And let's see, I don't think we had any Coffee Fund Classic participants between shows this time, but we do have a new producer on Patreon. So you can become a patron on Patreon by heading over to patreon.com/airlinepilotguy. Again, directions on the website. And our new producer is Ryan Fiorini. I think I'm getting that right. Fiorini? Good. Oh, yeah. I need to get my little bell, don't I? All right. So Ryan has joined several fine people in the producer ranks on Patreon. So thank you very much, Ryan. I appreciate that. So if you're interested in joining this great group of people, please head over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. You'll be glad you did. We will too. All right. So I think what we're going to do next is our our plane tail. That's what it's called. This thing is so new.
How long have you been doing this show?
I know. You've only done a handful of those things, right? How many hundreds have you done?
Over 350, that's all.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, it just seems like yesterday you just started doing these plane tails. Wow. Yeah. All right. So what do you think? I think we should do that. And then
I think it would be lovely, particularly while Bob's here.
Okay. Oh, you know what?
We don't hear him because I cut him out because I hate competition. So I've tried to edit Colin to seem a bit more seamless.
Okay.
Or I've added my own questions. A bit cheeky, really, but there you go.
Okay. Well, you do this so well, Captain Nick. So. Let's see. What I do realize at this moment that I normally download the file and play it through my sound playing app, but we're going to see what happens when I just push the button in Evernote and the push that button that no pilot would ever push. But I'm going to do it anyway because I'm living dangerously. So let's see what the old pilot has for us this week. The interview with Flight Lieutenant Colin Bell.
The old pilot's plain tales. Flight Lieutenant Colin Bell, DFC. Thanks to my friend, fellow RAF pilot and podcaster Bob Judson, I recently had the opportunity to take part in an interview of one of the most remarkable pilots alive today. Colin Bell is one of the last surviving World War II combat pilots, and he agreed to chat to us about his life, particularly his time as a Mosquito light bomber pilot flying out of RAF Downham Market. In this portion of the interview, he talks to us about his training and duties before he was posted to fly the Mosquito.
I was listening to my mother and father talking about the horrors of World War I, as well they might, because so many people lost lives in that dreadful battle. And, of course, they were appeasers to a man, and so many of their generation were. They were very, very nervous that in the 30s that if Churchill was brought in, as my father said, he'd have us into a war with Germany the day after tomorrow. So they were intent on appeasing Hitler and avoiding that situation. And of course, as we now know, appeasement never works. So therefore, fast forward to 1939 when war broke out. In 1940, I'd been watching the Battle of Britain. I wasn't at that time in the Air Force, but overhead came a German bomber, and it slung a bomb out at Hampton Court Bridge, and I was walking towards Hampton Court Bridge, and I could hear this bomb coming down, and I thought it was going to land at my feet. Well, it didn't. It landed on a house the other side of the road, and it's a jolly good job it was a light bomb, otherwise I shouldn't be talking to you this morning. But it covered me in dust and dirt and everything else, and I thought, well, I always intended to volunteer for the RAF, and I thought, well, this gave it greater impetus, and I thought, well, if I get into the RAF, I might even be able to catch up with this guy. But of course, I never did. It didn't work out that way.
We asked Colin why in particular he chose the Royal Air Force.
Well, I think every red-blooded young man at the time of the Battle of Britain wanted to get into the RAF and fly an aeroplane, a fighter, hopefully, and I was no exception. The idea of being in the Army didn't appeal to me, still less the Navy, so the obvious arm to go into was the RAF. But it wasn't easy because at that time, I suppose for every aircrew training position, excepting perhaps rear gunners, there were perhaps 12 young men trying to get in. And the RAF were, selection board, pretty picky. And when I went up before an interview board at Oxford, there was a group captain, and on his right a shrink, and on his left an engineering officer. And I could feel the chill in the room. I wasn't doing very well. And I think the engineering officer, to get me sort of away, said to me, and I remember it very clearly, he said, "You tell me," which meant he didn't believe me, "you tell me that you could strip down a motorcycle engine and put it back together again." And I said, "Well, I've done it." "In that case," he said, smiling at the group captain, "you won't have the slightest difficulty in telling me how fast the camshaft runs in relation to the crankshaft." And I said half time, which was the right answer. He looked very nonplussed. But the group captain laughed, and when the group captain laughed, of course, everybody laughed. I was in. When they laughed, they followed it up by saying to me, "If you weren't selected for pilot training, what role would you accept?" And I hesitated, and I saw all their faces falling, and I thought, if I don't say I will accept anything, I shall be out again, you see. So I thought, well, if they offer me something like being a rear gunner, I can always decline it. So even if I say I'll accept anything, so of course I said I'll accept anything, at which point they all cheered up no end, and they said, "Well, we've decided we will select you for pilot training." So that was rather nice. And the next thing that happened was that I went up to, I was sent up to an ITW initial training wing in Scarborough to be made fit. I thought I was fit before I got there, but Anyway, I was up there for about 4 or 5 weeks, and the sergeant came in and said, be ready to move in the morning, have all your gear packed and ready to go. He said, you were posted out. So I said to him, where are we going, Sergeant? And he said, well, you'll find out when you get there. And a typical reply. But when we got there, after a long sea journey, all up round Iceland and everywhere else, and into Canada, eventually, where I finished up at a place called Lakeland in Florida, where I was taught to fly by what was then the American Army Air Corps. But remember, when I went out there in beginning of 41, America wasn't in the war, so I had to be formally demobilized in Canada to avoid me being interned when I got into America. So I went out there nominally as a civilian, but it was an odd experience. It was a environmental and other challenge, because my last meal over here would be a doorstep of bread, piece of floury margarine, and if I was lucky, a scoop of jam out of a tin, and a mug of cocoa. And when I got out to America, there was a bar about a quarter of a mile long, covered with every food imaginable, sides of beef, ham, southern fried chicken, you name it. And there was a guy behind the bar, and I said to him, what can I have? And he said, well, you can have anything and everything, you know, it's up to you. So it was quite a shock. But the other shock, which was even greater, was that they had this weird West Point Code. Now, for those that have not heard of the West Point Code, it requires you as a cadet, if you break the rules, to report yourself. And if you didn't report yourself, it was incumbent on your fellow cadets to report you. Well, over here, as we all know, if you break the rules and get away with it, hallelujah. And if anybody was snitched on you, he'd be cast into outer space, never to return. So, yeah, it was quite a challenge. I never reported myself, and I certainly never snitched on anybody. But I kept my head down because I wanted to be a qualified pilot. I wanted to get my wings. In this case, it was American wings, of course. And after a period of training and going through, flying the little Stearman and onto a Voltee and eventually onto what the Americans called the 86, which you would know as the Harvard, I qualified and got American wings. And of course, then came the next shock. After I went up to Canada to pick up my uniform, I was told to report back to my station in Dothan, Alabama. And there I was met by the station commander, and he said, I suppose you think you're going home? And I said, well, what else? And why am I here? And he said, well, we've had Pearl Harbor, and we've got this big expansion scheme on for training, and we're holding back half a dozen of you chaps to be instructors. So I said, instructors, hold it, sir. I said, yesterday, as it were, I was a cadet. Today I've got American wings, and you tell me that tomorrow I'm going to be an instructor. And he said, that's right. And I said, well, it's going to be the blind leading the blind. And he said, I don't care what you think. He said, in the morning, you'll go down on the flight line. There'll be 6 American cadets, and you'll be responsible for them. And he opened the door and kicked me out into the night. So that's how I became an instructor. 18 months later, when I left, the self-same station commander handed me a certificate that said that Pilot Officer Bell had completed a course of instruction to qualify as an instructor on 86 aircraft. Well, I never had a day's instruction on being an instructor in my life. So, I mean, it was all a con, wasn't it? I enjoyed my stay in America. They once I was qualified, of course, they kicked you around unmercifully as cadet, but that was their method of training, and they held over you the threat of immediate expulsion if you broke any of the rules or you failed to measure up. And I thought this wasn't a very good method of training, although, in point of fact, if you could put up with it, I feel, looking back, I think the American training was second to none. But they had this nasty arrangement whereby you were under the threat of expulsion. I've known people that were expelled within a sort of a week or two of getting their wings, which seemed to me extraordinarily wasteful. So when I got American cadets, I said my method of training is different to the American Army Air Corps. I said, you can take it from me that unless you do something diabolical, you'll all qualify. And, of course, it took the stress out of it straight away. And I think that if you teach people who are not under stress, as against people who are under stress, you get better results. But there we are. Who am I to say? I benefited from what I regard as probably one of the best training systems in the Western world. And it stood me in very good stead.
Used to stories of pilots going into combat with very little experience, we asked Colin how many hours he had when he returned to the Royal Air Force.
Oh, yes. By the time I got on to operations, I'd amassed over 1,000 hours, both training, being trained, training, and back in this country, conversion onto twin-engine Blenheims, and then training to be a night fighter, because that's what I wanted to be, but it never came about. I finished the course and could never get a posting. So one day, a chap called Mahadi, Group Captain Mahadi, came down, and he addressed us all in a hall and said, if anybody's got 1,000 hours or more, I'll recruit him straight in to the Pathfinder Nightlight Striking Force, Flying Mosquitoes. And I thought, well, this is good for me. So I kissed goodbye to the idea of being a night fighter, and I became one of Bennett's Light Night Striking Force.
As he moved on to the Mosquito, we asked Colin what it was like to fly.
Well, the Mosquito was the very best aircraft in World War II. I once flew a Spitfire, and inevitably people asked me how the Spitfire compared to the Mosquito, and I said there is nothing that the Spitfire can do that the Mosquito can't do. They're both fully aerobatic, and I said the Mosquito has got 2 Spitfire engines, so as the Americans would say, no contest. I mean, it could do anything virtually. It could photographic reconnaissance, Pathfinder work, such as I was on, Night Striking Force, coastal attack. It could manage whatever activity it was called upon to do. It would do it, but you have to remember it couldn't, for example, carry Barnes-Wallace's bouncing bomb. You needed a Lancaster for that. It couldn't drop the earthquake bomb that tipped the Tirpitz over. You needed a Lancaster for that. So when it came to carrying very, very heavy munitions, it had to be the Lancaster. Not many people know that the sound like Michael Caine, do I? Not many people know that the Germans had got a V3 weapon that they were assembling on the north coast of France. And this device had got long-barreled guns, and it was going to fire rocket-assisted shells, and they were planning to plump these into the city of London at the rate of, I think, about 12 or 14 a minute, you know. It would have made the city of London quite uninhabitable, but they'd got 6 feet of concrete above these guns, and Hitler had been assured by his people that no bomb would penetrate this, and it was virtually unassailable. Well, you see, as often happens, the Germans got it wrong. That they didn't realise that Barnes-Wallis had got this earthquake bomb, and Barnes-Wallis said, we won't bother to drop it on the setup, we'll drop it alongside it, and they'd create such an earthquake that it'd tilt the whole thing over. And so it happened. I think it tilted it over by about 20 degrees, and after that, of course, it was unusable. So you needed a Lancaster for that. Again, the Mozzie, good as it was, couldn't have done that job.
We asked Colin about the importance of reminding people today of the vital job he did during the war.
Very important, and that's why I'm very glad to take part in these podcasts or talks or lectures, call it what you will, because I think it's most important the younger generation should understand that the objective of Bomber Command was to destroy the German manufacturing capacity to attack us. And by us, I mean our men, our women, and our children. And I think, by and large, we did a pretty good job. I have particularly in mind the Peenemünde base, where the Germans were developing V1, V2, and V3 weapons, and how Lancasters went out there once it was realised what was happening, and they bombed it so thoroughly and caused so much devastation that when the commandant, who was lunching with Hitler, heard of it, he came down and surveyed the mess that Peenemünde was in, and it caused him so much grief that he had a heart attack, and he died, which I thought was very satisfying.
We'll leave it there for this week and continue this fascinating interview on the next Plain Tale. But before I go, I think it worth mentioning that in only a few months, Colin will turn 104 years of age.
Well, as Neil Landworm said in our live audience, amazing, amazing. 103, and that man speaks more coherently and clearly than I do at 65.
Yeah, I know. It was very easy to forget that, you know, he was carrying this enormous duration, this enormous weight of years. But, you know, he was as lighthearted, as coherent, as, engaging as, anyone I've ever spoken to. He was, a delight to converse with. And he had very clear memories of what went on there. And his opinions, you just have to remember what that man had been through in his life's experience. And remember that he was very much of that wartime generation. So when he makes that apparently callous remark about the commanding officer of the Peenemünde experimental base, where a lot of those dreadful weapons that we used to attack the UK were designed and built, he truly, his job was to go out and try and destroy people like that. So, we have to remember that Britain was in a fight for its life, and he was one of the brave men that was on our side, and thank heavens he was.
Yeah.
Because...
what a treasure. Really, honestly.
Absolutely. Yeah, and, he's not going to be with us forever. But while he is, I just recommend anyone who gets the opportunity to listen to him talk, please grab that opportunity. He is going over to America in the beginning of February, and he's going to be in California. And I will have all the details on the next show, because there's going to be another plane tell in a couple of shows' time probably. And I will be able to let you all know where he'll be speaking. If you can't get there, then, try and possibly, I know he'll be over there for a few days. To get across and see if you can meet up with him, but he's very hard to put in words what it is to meet a man like that. It's it's very touching, very very. I was quite taken aback. I was very honoured to have that chance, and thank you, Bob, for inviting me along. It was super.
Approved of your plane tail.
Yeah, Bob thought you did an amazing job.
That's
awesome
very
job.
kind.
I would like to say I really like this guy, Colin, because he was trained in the U.S. military, as I was.
Yeah,
he was first in Lakeland, Florida. That's where this vehicle that I'm doing the show from right now, the Road Vessel Studio, that's the dealership in Lakeland, is where I took delivery of this thing back in May. And then when he went to Dothan, Alabama, I don't know if you remember, but several shows ago when I was avoiding the hurricane, I was in Alabama and I met up with Armando in Dothan, Alabama. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, Napier Field, that is exactly the, I can't see it because I'm doing the virtual background here, so you can't see it, but Napier Field was exactly the field that Armando operates from in Dothan, Alabama. And there were several
amazing,
prints up in the FBO of AT-6s and stuff. Probably one of which Colin flew in and instructed in. And
almost certainly, I would say, yeah. If they're wartime generation aircraft, you definitely, yeah.
Nick, Bob makes an interesting point here.
Bob in our live audience says he's also relatively unusual amongst the Bomber Command veterans in that he's willing to talk so openly about his role in World War II. Many of them took their experiences to their graves. Yeah,
indeed. There was, in post-war analysis of how the war was conducted, there was definitely many waves of sympathy that went towards the German civilians who received what I think the British people at the time thought was their just deserts. The British people had suffered blitzes of many of their cities, particularly London and the coastal towns, etc. And we had been subject to constant bombardment. And let's not forget, it was the Germans in World War I who had developed the concept of complete war, utter war. In other words, civilians were treated like combatants when they sent Zeppelins over to bomb our cities. That was the concept of the time. And I think Bomber Command, within their capability, carried the war to Germany primarily to destroy their ability to create weapons of war. But I think there was probably in the background a feeling of it's their turn to reap the whirlwind of the destruction they've wrought on our country. I don't really mind which side of the fence you sit. I know which side Colin sits, and he's a veteran and he experienced it. So as far as I'm concerned, I utterly respect his attitude to that. And if you have a different attitude, that's also fine. I don't mind that at all. But you have to put it in the context of what he and the British people suffered at the time. Not just Britain, but I think of the other countries, Holland, Belgium, France, that suffered, Poland, the Eastern European countries, what they suffered at the hands of the Nazis. So, and remember that, countries, they want to win a war, and they want to win it properly, and I think we certainly did that. What you can pick at in histories many, many years later, well, if you want to do that, I'm sure you can probably sell a book or two, but I don't think you're going to change my mind, or Colin's come to that, on the way the war was conducted.
Another comment from Bob, Captain Nick. The full interview will be on my Leading for Number 4 Life Stories podcast on all major platforms on 15 December at 12 p.m. UK time.
Yeah, Bob is going to broadcast the unabridged, the completely unedited version of Colin's interview.
Oh, are we going to hear Captain Nick swearing in the background? And
yeah, you probably will.
Yeah.
And many more ums and ahs. And I would recommend, even if you're not particularly attuned to learning about leadership as a learning step in your career, then I would still recommend you go into Bob's website and pick out his podcasts that talk about his own aviation experiences. They're fantastic. Bob has a brilliant flying career, and let's not forget he finished his flying career flying both the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight Spitfires and the Royal Air Force Typhoon fighters. So, he was simultaneously flying the best of the first generation and the best of the fifth generation aircraft, or fourth generation. I'm not quite sure exactly where the Typhoon comes in there.
I need to ask Bob.
It's pretty damn good.
I need to ask Bob something. Did that smart a little bit when Colin kind of dissed the Spitfire when he was talking about the Mosquito? That must have hurt you a little bit, didn't it? Anyway, what a great first part of the interview. I can't wait to hear more, Captain Nick and Bob.
More to come.
All right. Very good. All right. Feedback time. Here we go. Let me play that bumper. And here it is.
Captain, incoming message.
All right. Let's start with number 7. And this is kind of alluded to it earlier in the show. This is from Chris Ryerson on Facebook. Thank you, Liz, for extracting that from Facebook, because I usually stay away from that platform as much as possible. Hi, APG. Sorry that it's been a while since I've been in touch. I would guess by now you may have heard about the New Jersey drone invasion. I'm not sure if you guys talked about it yet, but I wanted to share what I've observed. I live in a relatively rural, by Jersey standards, part of the state in Sussex County. Over the past few weeks, I have witnessed several aircraft that were clearly drones, often hovering stationary over the mountains or slowly patrolling. This evening, around 7:30, I was parked at a shopping center in town and witnessed one fly over Hamburg Mountain heading due west. As it approached the well-lit area, it suddenly shut off all its lights. I could still see it for a moment, but then lost track of it in the dark sky. However, I could hear the roar of a jet engine as it passed over, not a turboprop or the buzz of a quadcopter style. About 20 minutes later, a second one approached on the exact same trajectory. This time, a passenger jet was passing by, heading to Newark, and the drone again went dark as it crossed paths with the plane. I couldn't tell the altitude or the size of the drone, but it was definitely high enough I could see it approaching over the mountains and uncomfortably close to the passenger jet. I'm not sure what the operators have to gain spying on Walmart, but what concerns me is the proximity to the flight path to Newark Liberty International and trying to be sneaky, apparently. I'll be tuning in and catching up on any episodes I've missed lately. I'm very interested to hear what you guys think. Your 50% accuracy rate is certainly better than the panic on the social medias right now. I always appreciate your knowledge and insight. Love you guys. Please be safe out there. Chris. And he says, P.S. Why does the weird stuff always happen in New Jersey? Because you guys are all weird there, I think. Just kidding. PPS. It's War of the Worlds, Part 2 around here. Part 2. We have full-blown mass hysteria here in New Jersey with people claiming everything from aliens to chemtrails to military experiments. And almost 99% of the pictures I'm seeing people put forth as drones now are obviously planes. After seeing all that, I was concerned that you guys might think that I too had donned a tinfoil hat. I can assure you that I don't buy into any of that, and I'm certain of what I've seen. I know the military doesn't test aircraft over Jersey, and this sure ain't Grover's Mill. But there are plenty of credible videos and descriptions, including from law enforcement. Not every photo is a blurry Embraer. Once you cut through the wacky rumors, there is definitely something very sketchy going on over New Jersey. I know you've discussed drones many times in the past. Are pilots flying through this region concerned? And then he also gave us a link to an article from AP News, and the headline of which is numerous drone sightings in New Jersey don't pose safety concern, according to the governor. And so we'll have that link to the show notes as well. So Juan Brown of the Blanco Lirio YouTube channel put out a video either earlier today or yesterday regarding this, and basically centering on a hearing that took place in Washington, D.C., and had members of the FBI and Department of Homeland Security, Border Patrol, and one other agency, FAA, I think. And they were being asked questions by congressmen, congresswomen, congresspeople. And but it's funny because nobody really seems to know anything. But what they can say is that I think one of the senators yesterday or today basically said, "Oh, there's an Iranian ship, a mothership out there, anchored off the Atlantic coastline, and that's where they're launching all these drones coming in and everything else." And that's the only thing that they have positively said. Nope, that ain't what's happening here. Now, the only thing I'll say about this whole thing is the thing that really puzzles me is if this were something that was supposed to be stealth and like unnoticeable by anybody, why would they be flying the drones with the lights on at all? Yeah. I know that they said that they, when something's coming by, they turn the lights off. But I mean, all these pictures and videos that I've seen from the ground clearly show that all the lights are on these drones. And I'm thinking, if there were really something nefarious going on, you would think that you would never, ever see a light on these things. I mean, am I just being an idiot or what? Be careful how you answer that, Captain Nick.
No, I think you're quite right. If it is something that's illegal or that's designed to endanger the United States, no, you'd be completely stupid illuminating your drone.
Right.
You'd try and sneak it in at an altitude where people couldn't hear it, so that means it's going to be, much higher, and you're going to make sure the lights are off. And we've seen a video footage of the Ukrainians and the Russians attacking each other with drones, some of which are sort of commercially available, and they jerry-rigged them to carry mortar bombs or explosives, and then drop the things or descend them down onto armored vehicles and the like, and explode them. Now these drones seem to be benign in that there's been no known attacks whatsoever. And if a country wants to spy on America, Well, you don't need to fly a damn drone over it that attracts everyone's attention. You do it from a satellite.
Exactly. We have all these satellites up there in space that can see incredible resolution.
Bill has a Bill has a comment here, Jeff.
Bill Salton from YYZ. Maybe the drone drivers aren't very smart. Well,
I own a drone, and I would probably reflect on that and worry about my level of education. So I would say yes, that is a possibility. There are an awful lot of ignorant drone pilots out there. People buy them. They really don't bother reading up to find out what the regulations are. Mm-hmm. They fly them willy-nilly around airports, which is completely verboten, or above a certain altitude. In the UK, if you generally can't fly them above 400 feet above ground level.
Yeah.
That is the sort of drone altitude. You're allowed to fly them around there so long as you're not over areas of population and that sort of thing. Or if you're a professional drone pilot and do it for business, whatever, then you can qualify in order to fly over built-up areas, buildings, that sort of stuff. But generally speaking, you're not allowed to do any of that, which kind of limits what you're going to do. So if you're someone who hasn't educated themselves and just feels that it's your right to fly your drone wherever you damn want, then that could create a lot of hassle. So,
some have posited that this whole thing is a plan. This is a conspiracy theory, of course, but the government is purposely doing this and letting everybody see these things and everything else to basically put the kibosh on all civilian drone operations in the future. Like, we can't have this kind of spying and everything else on our country, so we're just only authorized people with the proper licensing and everything else will be able to operate drones in the future and that kind of thing. I don't know. Maybe that's more reasonable, I think.
We know that drones have the potential to be a weapon of war. Mm-hmm. And it would be nigh on impossible to tell the difference between one that was carrying a weapon and one that was just flying around with a camera on it, and some 15-year-old going, "Oh, this is fun. Look at the great pictures I'm getting." Mm-hmm. So from that point of view, I can see the security services are probably rightfully concerned.
Yeah.
But you've got to just define the places where it's safe to fly them and where you don't want them flown, and enforce that. So, yeah.
Ed Cove has a comment, Jeff.
Ed Cove in our live audience. First, a balloon from China, and now drones over New Jersey. I can't wait for the movie.
Yeah, it's got to be a bit slow going if it's balloons and drones in it.
A very slow-moving movie.
Don't think I'm going to sit through 2 hours of that. Sorry.
Well, there's worse things out there to watch for 2 hours, I would imagine. I have a question, APG. And this is one of my things. Chris, people always say tinfoil hat. I went to the grocery store the other day looking for tinfoil. I could not find it.
Oh, well, that's because all the hat wearers
it's
have aluminium already.
That's why. I don't think they make foil out of tin anymore. I just think it's kind of funny when we always talk about the tinfoil hat. I'm thinking, well, I guess, maybe years and years and years ago, they actually used tin. I don't know. Maybe I'm completely...
Did you just say aluminium?
I did.
As opposed to aluminum?
I did. I'm glad you picked up on that.
That's marvelous. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I know. I've been brainwashed, indoctrinated by you folks.
Yeah.
That's just my way of showing love to you guys.
Yeah. We appreciate that.
Let's do a couple more, guys.
Okay, a couple more, and then we'll shut this baby down.
4 and 5, and then that's about
okay.
it, maybe.
Let's see. Brent Loper sent this one in, and it's a graphic. And it depicts runway lengths needed for short and long haul aircrafts. Come on, people. It's not aircrafts, it's aircraft. No S is necessary. Thank you very much. So the top one's the ATR 72, 1,500 meters, Airbus A320, 1,900 meters, Boeing 777, 2,700 meters, Airbus A380, 3,000 meter runway, and then a Cherokee 140 with one passenger and full tanks of fuel. I don't even think there's a. It's basically
apparently it runs off the end of the runway without even getting airborne.
I think they're trying to say that the Cherokee 140 it doesn't have awesome performance.
No,
a lot of thrust
I
there.
think they're not far wrong, I suspect.
Awesomely
but
bad
I noticed
performance. Yeah.
this particular Cherokee is about the same size as an ATR 72, but
Oh,
there you go.
well, it's a special model.
Must be. Very good.
All right, let's continue on quickly with Ant. Ant Pruitt.
Hi, Ant.
Yeah, good to see you, man. Hope you're doing well. Hello, beloved APG team. I hope you're doing well. I wanted to ask if there's a reason for all of these reports of out of fuel for these non-commercial flights. Do these pilots not check their fuel before taking off for their joyrides? Isn't there a pre-flight checklist for GA pilots too? Yes. Love the show. Love y'all. And P.S. The story about the basketball team fighting was hilarious. You know, the story about the Clemson University of Alabama basketball team. Yeah. Auburn and Clemson are kind of the same kind of agricultural land grant university kind of setups for universities, different states.
Is that
very similar.
why they were swinging haymakers?
Could be. Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. Let me see. Nope, that wasn't it.
That's probably very apt. All right.
So never
Just
thought I'd get a
pickle.
sports story on the show. I'm down for it. Ha ha ha. Yeah. He says, cheers team. And again, this is from Ant. And he is a huge Clemson University fan for sure. Sorry they didn't do so well this year, sir, but there's always next year. Yeah. And I feel your pain being an Auburn grad. But as far as what he's asking about here, why all these out of fuel thing, well, that's just, we all kind of shake our heads as well. Yes, there are checklists to make, and I can't tell when I was a long time ago, when I was still in, high school, college, I worked at fixed base operations where one of my jobs was to refuel airplanes. And at John Wayne, Orange County, Santa Ana in California, we had the North 40 or whatever they called it at the time. It's like a huge area. I think that's where the terminals are now, or the terminal. But there used to be just row after row after row of GA airplanes parked out there. And my job would be to drive the fuel truck out there. And when certain ones were contracted for fuel services with our FBO, and there was like a code, the propellers being in a certain position where we'd fill them up. And I would watch people as I'm fueling airplanes come out, park next to their airplane, get out, untie the tie downs, and didn't even walk around the airplane. And they never even opened up the fuel caps to even take a quick, and this is low wing aircraft too. Now you can almost see where, okay, if you're really lazy and it's a high wing, you have to kind of get up, and it's a little precarious sometimes to get up on the little steps that they provide to, get up on top of that wing or access the fuel cap to take a peek at the fuel level. But I was just like, what, are these people idiots? I mean, they're just trusting the fuel gauge in their airplane to, know whether or not they have any fuel in it. I'm perplexed by the whole thing. And apparently there are a lot of GA pilots that continue to kind of operate like this, just assuming there's going to be enough fuel for the flight. And as we know, not always.
Doesn't work out.
Well, I remember when I started driving motor cars, I used to pay particular attention to levels of oil and petrol and air in the tires and things. And I have to say, as I've got older and older, I do that
That's
less
fine.
and less.
Yeah. But
I
what's
look
the
at the
consequence?
fuel gauge. Yeah, well, it's true. It's a lot safer in the car if you run out of fuel.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, you're right. It does worry me that these folk they're treating flying an airplane like driving a car.
Mm-hmm.
They are not the same.
Nope.
Once you're driving a car, you haven't left the ground. You're not motoring around at 150 miles an hour. An airplane is infinitely more dangerous. So take care out there, folks, and do your job properly.
Please. Although maybe some of you don't, because then we wouldn't have a lot to talk about on our show. So,
Yes.
you know,
And the police wouldn't have nearly so much fun, trying to work out how to get a Cessna 150 off some freeway somewhere.
exactly.
One
Exactly.
more, Jeff, whichever one you
All right.
want.
Okay, I'm gonna go with this one. I believe Liz from Kevin Dryden in Canada. Let's see. So we were talking about a story, Vancouver Diversion, the Cargojet 767
Oh, yeah, I remember
incident,
this.
and they landed on the north runway at Vancouver, and we were discussing possible going to a different airport because of this hydraulic system problem they were having. And so let me first state that Kevin lives in Comox, BC, which is on Vancouver Island, across the whatever that body of water is there between Vancouver Island and
Georgia Strait.
the Georgian Strait or Georgia Strait? Georgia Strait. Okay. And so he lives in Comox, and he says, why not divert to Comox? 10,000 feet and only 80 miles versus 160 to STL. No snow here at that point or now. STL. What's STL? I don't know. Anyway, he said, I could hit the runway with a rock if I wanted. Canadian military does almost nothing here. WestJet runs planes in and out to Calgary, Edmonton, and Vancouver, as does the evil Air Canada. Well, tell us what you really think, Kevin. I guess he doesn't like Air Canada. So I think we had mentioned, or I'd mentioned that, or maybe Liz did, because she's more familiar with the Canadian geography, but she said something about Abbotsford International, which is basically not necessarily a suburban area of Vancouver, but not very far from Vancouver. And I think I did a little Google map searching and directions and that kind of thing. And it's about a 1 hour, ish, a little over, anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half, depending on the traffic, from Abbotsford International Airport to Richmond, which is where the Vancouver International Airport is. And you don't have to take any ferries or cross the Georgia Strait as you would with Comox. And the image that we're seeing here shows it's beautiful, that Vancouver Island. That whole area is just absolutely gorgeous. But you see the estimated time en route if you had to. Now, this is not flying time. This is actual surface transportation time. And the reason why I kind of put this in this way is that I'm thinking if they had some kind of an issue and they did divert to either Abbotsford or Comox, there's probably a likely chance that they would need to, use surface transportation to get back to Vancouver or whatever, possibly, or maybe mechanics and parts coming from Vancouver and then going out to either Comox or Abbotsford. And just logistically speaking, even as beautiful as Comox is compared to Abbotsford, I would imagine that the time en route being almost 4 times the time, not necessarily the distance, because you have to take a ferry to cross over the Georgia Strait, and that just takes a lot of time. So I'm thinking that may not be a great decision, even though I know you'd love to see people divert into Comox, Kevin. But I'm thinking that might be part of the consideration there. Now, in this case, it was a freighter, so passenger handling is not a factor at all in this particular situation. But that would definitely be a big consideration if you had passengers on board.
But you still have to get to the cargo somewhere.
You still have to get the cargo somewhere, so you need to get the thing fixed. But it turns out that actually the runway lengths at Abbotsford and Comox and that north runway at Vancouver International aren't that much different, really. A couple 100 feet maybe is the biggest difference between them all. So, 6 one, half a dozen the other, I would say. Yeah. So, there we go.
Yeah, I agree. By the way, STL, is it St. Louis?
Well, that's what it is in the U.S., but
Aerodrome du Bois Gomin, or Canadian Transcontinental Airways Airport. First airfield of the Quebec City.
Quebec City. That's way over there.
Well, I don't know.
Completely different province on the other side of the country. I don't know.
Well,
I'm not.
It only looks 1.5 inches on the map.
Oh, yeah, it's not that far. And you zoom out really far, and it's like nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know. Does that make sense, Kevin? I mean, that's what I'm thinking anyway. But turns out they didn't divert anyway, so, well. Yeah.
Let's do one last one, number 11.
Okay.
And this also came in on Facebook, by the way.
Oh, okay, this is another one that came in on Facebook, and this is going to do it for us. We'll wrap up after this. And this is an image sent in from Dale Eastham. He's spotted in the wild at Dunedin Airport. Is that the way you pronounce that? Dunedin Airport in New Zealand. Are you hungry? No, Dunedin already. Yeah. Wait a minute, that deserves us. Thank you. So the sign says, pardon?
Can you, read it because it's not
okay. The sign says, max hug time 3 minutes, and it shows a couple of figures hugging each other. For fonder farewells, please use the car park or hotel. No, it didn't say that last part.
Yeah, get a room.
Get a room. Exactly. Yeah, so I guess they're trying to reduce the amount of traffic and idling and
public
loitering.
Displays of affection.
Displays of affection, yes.
For voting, yes.
Very
although, I mean, I remember trying to get out of the airport. You know, you're in some big international airport and you're all being herded out into the departure area. And it only takes 2 or 3 families to meet at the same time, and they can completely block all the exits because you've got like 10 people all trying to hug each other, and you're trying to get through with your cat. You must have noticed that hundreds of times. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't have thought this particular airport was going to be over.
They're not particularly affectionate there in New Zealand?
Well, no. It's not like they have huge numbers of amorous passengers disembarking at the same time. So I'm just wondering how genuine this is.
Tim Van Ram says, any hugs longer than 4 hours, please see your doctor. Good one.
Oh, I hope you're making a note of these for the show title.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that's very funny.
Well, you know, we still have some great feedback that we're going to push to the next show coming in from Trent and Texas Anlashock and Luis Casares. I think I got that right. We'll find out next show when we read Luis's feedback and more. Hopefully, maybe some feedback from you, listener. Yeah. So thank you for watching the show. Please head over to our website, our website, airlinepilotguy.com, where you'll find information about our crew and our wonderful, wonderful community. We have a library, believe it or not. Suggestions for great books to read, mostly having something to do with aviation, and that's all managed by a real librarian, a legal librarian, actually. Anyway, what else is over there? We have
Plain Tales. You can see
Plain Tales. More information about our old pilots' Plain Tales, and merchandise and a calendar. Oh, just so much there. Just check it out. Airline Pilot Guide.
Some very out-of-date information about the crew.
Yes, very out-of-date. Yeah. And one of these days, we're going to get around to fixing it. But don't hold your breath, please.
Yeah, I've got one of those round turrets.
Yeah, I have a couple as well.
I'll send it to you.
I think I got them from you, so that's okay. Don't send me
okay.
Yeah, anyway, we're also on the social medias, and Captain Nick is going to tell us all about it.
Yeah, on facybookie.com, you can get us if you type in /Airline Pilot Guy. And X has us, that's what used to be Twitter, with the handle at APG Crew. Instagram.com, very similar, /APG Crew. And of course, this videotaped, that's going back a bit. This
tape, what's that?
Yeah, videotape. It's magnetic videotape version. You can find on youtube.com /at airline pilot guy /streams.
Or stash if you prefer.
Stash, yes.
Yeah.
Nice stash. I've got a tash. You've got a stash.
Check it out. And let me see. I'm in my road vessel studio, and it's the bathroom is just like
it should be fairly noisy with airplanes flying over you.
Yeah. Hello? Can you tell us about Slack?
Okay, but I'm dripping wet.
He's always so compliant. He'll tell us all about Slack each and every week. So here we go.
APG listeners, please join us on our Slack team. Slack is a communication, coordination, and sharing platform that works on your mobile, laptop, or browser. On Slack, we share news and ideas, we suggest episode and plain tales topics, we plan events and meetups. To get into the Slack team, please email me at slack@airlinepilotguy.com. That's SLACK, Sierra Lima Alpha Charlie Kilo @airlinepilotguy.com. Or send me a tweet with your preferred email address to @Hillel, and I'll send you an invitation. That's Hillel, spelled Hotel India 11 Echo 1, and see you in Slack.
Thanks a lot, Hillel.
Jeff?
Yeah?
If I could walk over there, I wouldn't need the talcum powder.
I'm not sure exactly what he's talking about, but okay. Anyway, so thank you very much, seriously, to Hillel for starting up and managing the Slack group. And if you're interested in it, we heard him do a spiel there about how you can join up with the Slackers on Slack. And also, we'd like to say a big thank you to our producer who does so much work.
Yeah, good job, Liz. Well done
behind
with
the
Blade
scenes.
Tail.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Excellent. Perfect, as far as we know. Perfect timing on that.
Good enough for me.
Yeah, excellent.
That's all that matters.
All right. And also thanks to our chat room, our live audience that
yes,
we have each
they
and every
caught up
week.
with us. We tried to fool them, but
Tried to
they
ditch them,
found
yeah.
us anyway.
Yeah, I guess next time we'll just have to start a couple of hours early, and then maybe we
that
can
would be
avoid.
best, I
Or another day.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
No. Anyway, always great to see everybody in our live audience. And finally, we'd like to just say thanks for listening. Thanks for telling your friends and all that stuff and reviews and whatever. We appreciate all of it. And we especially thank our financial supporters, our coffee bar club
can't
members.
do with that.
Yes. And with that, we're going to say, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care, and God bless.
Yeah. Bye-bye, everybody.
See you next time.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the airline pilot guy.
Good day.
I used to be such a good pilot till I started APG. I opened doors for little old ladies. I helped them to their seats. Airline pilot guy, I fly America. Oh, airline pilot guy, he can land in heavy fog. I got no friends 'cause I'm always flying. I just don't have the time. But I can land this old plane. I can land it just fine. Airline pilot guy.